Welcome back to the Pulaski County 100 Families Alliance podcast. Thank you guys for joining us. We have the pleasure of speaking with the director, Doris Wright. I am so excited because she is truly the epitome of community engagement and the importance of being involved in your community. And this lady right here, she's going to talk about it. Dr. Wright, thank you so much. Director Wright. Dr. Wright.
Oh, yeah, I'll receive that.
Amen to that. Thank you so much for joining us. I actually had a pleasure of meeting you previously and speaking to you, and you just shared your heart with me and how you are so involved in your community. And I was like, you know what? I want to speak with her and let you share your heart to our alliance, the 100 Families Restore Hope Alliance here in Pulaski County. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, LaShanna, thank you for the invitation to do the interview.
Absolutely.
I love talking about community and what it means to be a part of a community. And I think that is something that a lot of people don't understand and the importance of, and it grounds you and it gives you a connection rather than always something negative. This is something that I can personally do that's positive by being involved.
Absolutely.
Well, a little bit about me. I am a native of Lake Village, Arkansas.
Okay.
I moved to Little Rock in 1987, and I purchased my first home in the John Barrow neighborhood on July 3rd, 1993.
All right.
And there began the greatest adventure of my life. Who would have thought, just buying a little house on a little street in a neighborhood that most people had written off? I didn't know that at the time. I was just excited to have my first home.
Right.
And I didn't realize how the community out there was viewed until I started interacting with people outside of the community. Because once you buy a home, things take on a different...
That's right. The whole perspective.
Everything changes.
You're right.
It's just different than living in an apartment. Right. You know, that home, once you make that investment, you want to see everything go right.
Right.
You want to get to know the people around you. You want to make sure that you're fitting in and that they understand you and you understand them, so you all can live there together in peace. And the odyssey that I began happened because the developer that built the homes in that area had been allowed to do so without putting in proper drainage. So I contacted the city about the erosion that I was experiencing across my yard, and they directed me to the neighborhood association. And so I joined the John Barrow Neighborhood Association, and through a series of workshops and partnerships and meetings with the city and planning department and Public Works, we were able to get that problem addressed.
Wow.
And that kind of lit a fire in me because in the midst of all that, I was finding out what the deficiencies were in the neighborhood. At that time, in the 90s, the city had made no capital investment in that community. They had done some streets, but there was no community center. There was no city-owned facilities out there. The neighborhood alert centers did not exist at that time. And so the neighborhood was pretty much struggling. And so we were wrestling with crime. And as you know, during that time, 93, 94, 95, 96, that was the gangs and all of that. And our parks were not safe. And our kids were getting attacked in the neighborhood parks. And so it became a challenge and to see how we could address these things.
Right.
So that started my work in the community, was trying to have a safe neighborhood, be able to walk down the street and not be afraid, and have our kids be able to use the parks that our tax dollars were paying for.
That's right. And so your inspiration was when you bought that home, knowing that you wanted to live in a community that was safe,
clean, and vibrant. It was important to have stores that you could go to where you didn't have to leave your community. So our neighborhood association was very, very active. We were one of the most active neighborhood associations in the city at that time. And we developed the first neighborhood action plan and that the city of Little Rock adopted for revitalization in a community.
That
the
is
John Bear
awesome.
Neighborhood Association.
That is
and
awesome.
we were able to attend national organization events like Neighborhoods USA, and we learned from other communities and neighborhoods across the country how they had made changes, and it helped me after I got involved in the politics of it. It helped me understand about branding, how to take charge of the narrative and tell your story instead of letting your story be told.
Wow.
So that became very, very important to us to have an identity that we could be proud of because we claimed the identity. It's not something that was put upon us by those that were on the outside looking in.
Yeah. So did you ever think, and we're just gonna touch it a little bit, but did you ever think you would be in this political arena?
No.
Did you ever
No, that was
aspire to even be a director of
No, I never wanted to be president of the neighborhood association. I always wanted to be secretary. I never wanted to be anything but the secretary. I always wanted to be the person that kept the records, the person that made sure that events got organized and scheduled, and through a series of events, I was maneuvered into that. But because they kept telling me, you can't keep running from this. You have the skill set that we need. You have the knowledge base that we need. And the knowledge base that I had was monitoring, client intake. I understood how to oversee projects, how to organize projects, how to coordinate with people, and just basically how to get things done.
Yeah. Well, you've gotten some things done. And with your tenure in your position, just tell us some of the things that you've gotten done. And then I'm going to talk about the exciting for me. All of it is exciting, but let's talk about
the first project that I did was, of course, the drainage project that whetted my appetite because that allowed me to put in the streets, this curb, gutter, and sidewalk in a whole subdivision. When you think about that, that's huge.
That's a lot. Yeah.
And at that time, you remember you're talking the 90s. So I think the project ended up being about $300,000-$400,000.
Oh, wow.
To get those streets put in there with the sidewalks.
Jeez.
And I still live in that neighborhood today.
Okay.
I sold the first house and built another house right behind it on another street that was a part of that. So I had no intention of leaving. That was a labor of love, and I love my neighbors. The second project that I worked on that was major was the McMath Library.
Yes,
I contacted Dr. Bobby Roberts at that time, and as we were working on the neighborhood plan, we did an inventory. What are our assets? What are the pros? What are the cons? What do we have going for ourselves? Well, we were surrounded by schools. You know, we had Parkview, we had Henderson, we had Romine, we had Bell, we had Wilson, we had Brady, all of those schools, and not a library anywhere in that area. The closest library to us at that time was Sue Cowan Williams, and you know where that is, down on Wright Avenue.
Yeah.
So
and with transportation being a problem for our family,
there was no transportation up and down Barrow Road at that time.
Okay.
So
a library was needed.
Very much so. So I was drafted by the Neighborhood Association to contact Dr. Bobby Roberts and talk to him about the possibility of a library in our area. And Dr. Bobby Roberts, I still miss him since he's retired. He came out. He actually, after I made the phone call, went down to his office and we sat down and talked. He said, I'm going to come out and take a look. He actually came out to the John Bear area and drove around, looked at all the sites that I had told him were prospective sites. And he called me the next day and he said, you know what? It just makes sense to have a library there. You all are the center point. You are halfway point between our current branches, which was Sue Cowan Williams, and I believe there was one out in Napa Valley area.
Okay.
So he looked at the site that I had talked to him about, which was where it currently is, which was across from, not too far from Second Baptist Church.
Yeah.
It was a 10-acre site. And he said, you know, if we build there, it'd be the largest site that we've ever developed a library on.
Wow.
And so fast forward, we made the decision to name it after Governor Sid McMath. At that time, he was still alive. And he got an opportunity to come out and walk the site and see. And he was blind at that time, but he actually got a chance to physically walk out onto the site.
That is awesome.
And actually, his wife and kids were able to explain to him how beautiful the location was. And
That's
so we were very pleased with that. And I remember the article that appeared in the newspaper, and it was a picture of the library, and had a picture of this little boy and his mom. And she did an interview with the media, and she was telling them how he was just so excited that the library was opening and that they could walk to the library. They lived in Asbury Park Apartments, which was behind Second Baptist Church. So they were able to walk down the sidewalk and get to the library.
And get him some
And she
books.
said he had been pestering her all week. When was
go
the
to the
library going to open? Yes. And since that time, it's been added on to. We've expanded the children's wing. We've expanded the reading areas where you can check out laptops and work and do your homework and things right there at the library. So it is a much used branch, and it is a major asset to our community and for our students.
That is so good.
And remember now, back when this was being done, everybody wasn't on the internet like they are now.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And there's still some people that don't have access at home.
That's right.
So it is a very much used facility.
Yeah, that is good.
So those two projects wet my whistle, and I fast forward a little bit, and we were able to finish that neighborhood plan, and we started following it. And one of the things that the surveys that we did showed us that people wanted a community center. And they wanted a community center so that we would have a means of getting together with each other.
Yeah.
Most of the time, people just go to work, go home, go to grocery store, and go to church. Well, when you're at church, you got your church face on, okay?
Right.
You fellowship with the people at your church. Neighborhood people, you may see them at the grocery store, but then you're trying to get in and get out.
Right.
So unless you live next door to the people, a lot of times folks just go to work and come home.
That's
so
true.
there was no gathering place. There was no place to interact. There was no place to actually see each other in a informal setting where you could get to know each other and, see your kids and interact with them in their sports leagues. So we knew that was going to be a long haul because you're talking major money right there. So what we had to do was stay engaged with city officials at that time, and we had to try to help ourselves. So the first after school program that was ever in the John Bear area, I started it at Parkview High School, and I worked with Dr. Dexter Booth and Dr. Linda Brown, and they gave us space at the school, and Dr. Booth was our on-site coordinator.
Wow.
Anytime you use a school, you got to have paid staff from the school district there, and he agreed to do that. So
I've been good. As the principal of the school, right? Okay.
He was assistant principal at that time.
Okay.
Dr. Linda Brown was principal.
The principal. Okay.
But he agreed to work in the evenings.
Wow.
Remember now, this is after school. So they worked all day, and he had to agree to work in the evening. And we paid our teachers there to tutor the kids and help the kids with their homework. So that was the first attempt to do that.
Because that says a lot about them believing in what you were doing.
They knew the community needed that.
That's right.
And even though Parkview has been a part of that community forever, nobody ever associates Parkview with John Barrow.
Yeah.
They just don't.
You're right.
Okay? They just
You're
don't.
Right.
So, and I was not.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. That just goes to show you about branding.
Yeah.
So, I am forever grateful to Dr. Booth for that, because that showed that it could be done. Even though the city didn't have any city-owned facilities, we made use of the facilities that we had.
Right.
And then the next area that I began to see a need in was in sports. Kids love sports.
Absolutely.
And when an opportunity presented itself, I started a baseball program. And Dr. Jewel came to me, and I think he's deceased now, but he was a dentist. And he loved baseball.
Yes.
And so he came to me and tried to get me to advocate on behalf of their team at another park. And I'm like, no, that's their park, their rules. They can run it the way they want. What I will do is help you start a league here if you will recruit the kids in this neighborhood.
Okay.
So we struck a deal, and that's how we started.
That is so good.
Fast forward to 2002, the Rosedale Optimist Club decided to close their ballpark.
Yes.
And they contacted the city, and the parks director at that time was Mr. Brian Day. He's now the Port of Little Rock director.
Okay.
And he called me, and he said, look, I want to accept this property that they're wanting to donate to the city. He said, but I don't need another park that just going to sit there and we can do nothing with because we can't program it. We don't have any money. He said, if you can move your baseball program over there and play your games there, he said, I will help you with the maintenance and the overhead. We just need people in the park. I just can't justify accepting this donation if I can't get a program in there. And so I met with the neighborhood association, and they talked me into it because I knew nothing about sports. I've never played sports, and I'm not a sports person. I'm not an outdoorsy person. I'm a more bookish person. Libraries are my thing. I love going to the library, sitting there reading books or getting books and going home. Right. I've never been a sports-oriented person. Didn't know anything about baseball. So the city agreed to take the program, to take the park on if we moved in, and we did. Okay. And so there was a lot of infrastructure work that had to be done. So they had some bond money coming through at that time, so they upgraded the lighting and the wiring and everything. And we had played our first games there in 2005.
Wow.
So that was...
And there was history there because, okay, my sons are 27 and 25, and they played at Rosedale, Little League, all the way up, And I remember Dr. Jewell because he did, I think their last, before they got, got old enough, they stopped playing. But I remember when he was coaching then. But there's a lot of history there.
Yes, there's a lot of history. We started at age 3 with age 3. We have a 3 and 4 year old program, a 5 and 6 year old program, 7 and 8 pitching machine, and then we have girls softball. And at our height, we had 92 teams.
Oh my God!
And that's a lot of kids.
That's a lot of kids. A lot of kids.
Yes, and we played up until the last season was 2016. Wow. Okay. And then the city took it over. Okay. And we still played, but we didn't have a season in 2020 because of COVID.
Wow. Okay.
So
and COVID impacted a lot.
A lot of things.
Wow. Well, Director Wright, we have a part 2 coming up. Okay. So this information is so important because you are talking about engaging and being involved in the community. So we're going to come back for part 2, and we're going to get into this complex, this huge, exciting initiative that you just birthed, really, for the community. And we're going to talk about some of the things you have coming up.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, guys, and come back for part 2.